Hey guys, welcome back. So in this episode, I'm going to walk you through how I create a leather keychain. So this is called a quarter keeper keychain, and these are really awesome because you can throw like guitar picks in there, a quarter. That's why they're called a quarter keeper keychain. And then also like holy metals that are blessed and things like that. So I wanted to walk you through this from beginning to end, starting with the template that I made. So my template here is just cut out from a pizza box, really a piece of cardboard. You can see on mine I've actually adjusted the flap here and actually extended it up because I was a little short when I folded this over. Alright guys, so I'm going to take my template here and lay it on my piece of leather. You just have to utilize the space, try not to just go kind of funny out there. You want to get up next to these lines. So you're going to take your pencil, and a recommended pencil that I've used is an 8B pencil. Don Gonzalez, who does a lot of leather work and is fantastic, had recommended that. And it's a great lead because it'll stay on the leather. Some just number 2 pencils don't seem to stick on the leather very well. So I'm just going to go ahead through here and just mark my template. Also remember too that when you make your template on a piece of cardboard, that you have one side marked as flesh side and the other side is hair side, because sometimes with these things, not with this one because this can go both ways, but if you have a wallet or some other project that can only go one way, you don't want to cut out your leather and have it be the wrong side up. So now I'll take my knife and go ahead and cut that. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this side and make sure it's nice and straight. Stay right along that metal ruler, and I use a metal ruler because I've used wood and plastic rulers in the past, and anytime I use those, they really chew up these sides and then you don't have a nice true edge. Alright, so that's your piece of leather right there cut out. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step, which is we're going to case this leather. So what casing the leather means is you're going to get this leather good and wet, because anything that you're going to do with stamping or cutting, decoratively anyway, needs to be done when it's wet. So I'll go ahead and wet this, and a tip that I've kind of learned over the years doing this is that you want to make sure you wet all the leather. Now for this keychain, we're going to want to bend this in half right here at this spot here. So I'm going to wet that. But if I were only going to wet this part here, as I bend this, once this water dries and everything is done, I'll have a watermark here, because there are like minerals in the water, and especially out here in the country we've got hard water with iron and everything, and so that would show up as kind of after the whole thing is done, you'd see a difference in color. So it may not be a huge deal, because if you're antiquing or staining, it wouldn't be a big deal, but I always like to make sure that it's uniform, even when dyeing, just to make sure that I've got the same base coat color before I start doing that. I'm going to go ahead and do my burnishing of my edges. So your leather pieces should all probably be burnished on the edges unless you're going for a certain look. And you do both sides when you burnish. Burnishing just means that you're going to kind of burn the edges with friction. And that's going to give you a nice kind of polished look to your projects. So I kind of make all sides nice and wet, and you can also use saddle soap with this water to kind of help give you a little bit of a wax in there. So you can use a burnisher, which is just a piece of wood really with a groove in the middle, and I've got a couple different styles of these that you could do. Now this leather is 4 to 6 ounce leather, which is really thin, and so it makes it a little hard to use this burnisher, but you're basically just using friction to kind of start rubbing, and you're going to start basically polishing these edges. It's a little harder to get in these here with this, but I'll show you a little trick. I'm going to probably use this on this small of a project. What I'm going to opt for is a piece of canvas. It's a pair of cargo pants shorts, it's just canvas. And what you can do is just start rubbing your edges like this and give it a nice polish. And the other nice thing too is that this will start, in a way, antiquing and accelerating that antique process of if you had this in your pocket all the time. See how that color has changed to a little bit more of a darker, richer color? So that's what happens when you wear these, you know, wallets and belts and everything over time, saddles. Eventually they just get darker and darker, and it's just called a patina. But I'm just going over this, and that's really what I'm looking for, is just this dark patina, old-fashioned look like I've had it for many years. And since I wet the whole thing, you can actually kind of rub the entire area, and that's going to give you this dark color everywhere too. As long as that water's on there, that friction will kind of turn it dark. You know, anytime that you use water, things are going to swell up a little bit. And so you can kind of see my pinholes started to close up a little bit, and that's fine because it doesn't really matter. I can see them still. But anytime you do a lot of cuts and carving and pounding, if you have to re-wet your project, sometimes you lose those. And so what you may have to go back through and do some more tooling to kind of bring that back up if you are continuing to wet it. But you can kind of see the difference in color, you guys. So that's just with me working it. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the stitching. Alright guys, so one thing I almost forgot. Before you stitch this baby up, make sure you put your ring on the end, the key ring. So when it's wet, then it's pretty easy to bend this, you know, and so you can just slide it right over the top. But that's going to be one thing that you're going to want to have on there before you stitch. I'm going to use this stitching groover. This is just a tool that'll give me a nice, real small groove that I can follow when I'm punching my holes for the stitching. I'm only going to go down to about right here. And turn it around, do this side here. So I'm going to come back here with this and punch these holes right along this line, and using that as a guide. So you want to make sure you have the equal amount of holes. Now you want these to go all the way through, or your stitching is going to be a pain. And then just follow the other holes as a guide. Alright you guys, so let's go ahead and punch our holes for our snap. So I've just got one of these tools here that'll clamp a different size hole. And these are nice for belts and other different projects where you need to put a hole in there. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've already kind of pre-selected the size that I wanted to match my snaps here. So I'm going to go ahead and punch these holes. Okay, so now I got my holes made. These actually might have been a hair too big for this snap, but that'll work. So this is kind of what it looks like as you start putting this together. Pretty simple. So I've got, these come, you know, in just different sets from Tandy and Weaver and everybody. But this will help me to pound this inside and kind of flatten it out. But once I put this on here and pound it out, it'll flatten it out, and then this will be, then you won't be able to pull this out. So I'll go ahead and pound this down now. Alright you guys, so for this part here, since this is a nice back, we want to use something that's not going to get kind of banged up when I'm hammering. So this is what they send you that you can use, and this will just kind of lay underneath the leather and put that screw or the snap top right there, and then you can hammer away and not worry about that getting all stretched up. Alright you guys, so I went ahead and hammered that in there, so that's now on there nice and good and tight. Snaps pretty good. Alright you guys, so stitching this project won't be too hard. This is just, you know, two different sides here to stitch. So I'm going to start kind of in the middle here, right between the flaps. That way I can conceal my knot when I start. And there's definitely different ways to stitch. So I'll tie my knot. Make sure that's not going to get pulled through. So I got that there. I'll go ahead and snip off this edge here, so there's not a whole lot of thread. You're going to take a lighter and you're going to burn the edges. So this is imitation sinew is what this thread is called. It's basically what the Native Americans would have used back in the old days, but it was actually real sinew from buffaloes and different animals. But this is imitation sinew, and so it's got a wax feel to it, and it's real strong. But what's nice is that you can take a lighter and burn this edge or this end, and it'll curl up. See how it curls up like that? And you can just kind of use your finger to, and hopefully you saw that. It just basically just kind of curls up, and you use your finger to just kind of ball it up so that it's nice and flat. And that's not going anywhere. So I'll keep stitching around the corners and see how we do. One thing too, if you don't get a real nice punch through, like some of these didn't go all the way through, these are nice and handy to have on hand. I just go around one time here, and then I'll go ahead and start my seam here. So, and like I said, you can kind of do whatever you want here. There's definitely different techniques that you can learn about. Just keep snugging them tight. You know, one thing to remember too is if you're gonna dye this leather, which we're not, but you'd want to dye this probably before you stitch. I've done it both ways, because your stitches will get dye on them too. If you don't want the dye affecting those, then you want to make sure you do the dye first. So I just went, this is my last stitch, and I just went around this twice. Crap, you guys. Crap. Okay. Is there a trick to get this on? Oh, brother. Okay. So, here's the way you get it on, okay? So, I kind of bent this a little bit so that I can slide this right on this flap. There we go. I don't like doing that. This is my, sample piece, so it's not a big deal, but that can kind of ruin and scratch the leather a little bit. You can kind of see it did right there, but it'll be okay. So anyway, there, you don't want to do what I just did there. Anyway, at least I didn't do the other side. I guess it wouldn't matter. Anyway, okay. I'm going to go ahead and stitch the other side, and then we'll kind of look at it. We'll be pretty much done at that point, other than just antiquing it a little bit. And I'm just going to wrap this around, try to match as best I can that other side. So on the back side here, since we've already kind of finished our inside, I'm just going to kind of thread this here and make a small knot on the end. What we'll do here at the very end, since I got that knot in there, I'm going to go ahead and cut that, and then take my lighter and burn it. You can see how it kind of just shrivels up, and sort of push that into the stitch a little bit. And then what I'll also do is then go around these stitches once I kind of got them all out the way that I want. I'll go around with my lighter and just heat them up. Oops. Not too much, because it'll start affecting your leather and drying it out. But when you do that, it'll shrink up those threads and really tighten them up. So that's kind of how I finished that leather stitching project. I got my button. I think I went to the side a little bit too far with my button on top. Hey, it's handmade. What do you expect? Try to antique this thing a little bit and make it look a little nicer. And what I used for that is I used this mixture that I made, and this is just some simple leather balm, you could call it, and it's a mixture, kind of a special mixture of beeswax and olive oil heated up. And just start working it into that leather. Taken out when we did this project and got it wet and kind of dried it out. This is going to really bring back a nice color back into this leather and keep it looking nice. So at this point, it's almost done. Get that bend pretty good too, because that got damaged a little bit. And you can do the back side too if you want. And it'll kind of dry out and that color will get a little lighter. But that's the keychain for the most part right there. You could, we could have stamped the back side. I had this little bit of a damage mark right there earlier. But if you got any different stamping or tooling tools, you'll definitely want to do that before you do any stitching so you can lay it nice and flat. So thanks a lot, you guys. There's your finished quarter keeper keychain. I hope you learned something today. I know I did. I learned that my darn template is not straight because that button is off center. So we appreciate you coming by and taking your time to watch the video, and hopefully we can keep producing good ones for you. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.